Good evening and welcome to Legal Talk, the talk show brought to you by the law offices of O'Donnell, Weiss and Megay, your life, your business, your law firm. We're located at 347 Bridge Street in Phoenixville, and where we've been for 10 years, as a matter of fact. We're taping this show in February of 2016, Jim? 2016. And we're also at 41 High Street in Pottstown, where we've been for 61 years. How's that? O'Donnell, Weiss and Megay, www.owmlaw.com, your life, your business, your law firm. I'm David Megay. I'm one of the attorneys at the office, and I'm joined tonight by Jim Kovaleski.
Hi, Dave.
Jim's been with us for many, many years as well. And tonight, folks, we're going to be talking about first half of the show. And you know what, Jim? We might be able to make it the whole show. We're going to talk about title insurance. And then maybe if we have some time in the second half of the show, we're going to be talking about selling real estate privately with or without realtors, helping you list the property and sell the property. But Jim, the first half of the show, I want to talk about title insurance. You know, title insurance, I've been doing it for 29 years. I've been a title agent for 25th year, I think. And it's still amazing to me how little people understand about title insurance. I'm a title insurance agent. Well, you are as well, with Fidelity National Title Insurance Company. Folks, we have 4 or 5 attorneys in the firm who are also title insurance agents, and we have 2 paralegals with the firm, and that's all they do is process title insurance. But again, it's amazing, Jim, how little people know about title insurance. And could you give us a little thumbnail sketch of what it does and how often you pay it and how it works?
Absolutely, Dave. I agree with you. I mean, it's amazing that people, when they're purchasing a house, because that's usually one of the times that you'll go out and get title insurance, or they're doing a refinance, they don't even understand what that line item is, that title insurance. They just know it's a cost of getting to closing, or cost of purchasing the house or getting the loan. But it's insurance. It is insurance, like its name implies. And what it does is it insures against defects in title, issues with the chain of title. So if there's a missing deed, or if there's a hole in the title, meaning that someone that is in there is either in there that shouldn't be in there, or somebody that should be in there is missing from that. But it's an insurance that insures over or protects the homeowner and potentially the lender, if you get both policies, against that issue with the title. It's purchased one time, usually when you're buying the house or when you would refinance, because lenders will require you to go out and update it. So if you bought your house today and 10 years from now you go to refinance, they're going to probably want you to go out and get title insurance to make sure that no problems have popped up on title between the time that you owned it and the refinance, or that you didn't do something to the title that could affect the security, the mortgage that you're going to grant to the bank when you get that loan or get that refinance. And it's kind of unique because insurance, usually you're paying for something, for coverage that has already happened or that is going to be happening very quickly afterwards. So like your health insurance, you're paying for that month. Your dental insurance, you're paying for that month. Title insurance goes on for an indefinite period of time, at least on the owner's policy. So if you buy a piece of property, you own it for 100 years, your title insurance is going to cover you for that 100 years.
Right.
Now, if you buy it and you sell it for a year, it's only going to cover you for a year, as opposed to lender's coverage, which only covers you till you pay off the loan that's insured with that coverage policy.
Right, and we'll get into all those things you brought up in a little more detail, but you just said something, which I don't want to get too deep in the weeds or too esoteric, but you know, it's interesting. I never thought of it this way. The title insurance really pays for what happened in the past.
Yes.
Versus I just paid for my wife and I and our younger son automobile insurance. That pays for what may happen next week or next month or for the next 6-month premium, or a 6-month period, on our 3 vehicles. But title insurance pays for what happened or didn't happen in the past, which is kind of weird. That's a little esoteric. But it just occurred to me after all these years. I guess I knew it, but I never thought of it that way.
Absolutely. So
life insurance pays for next week or 50 years from now when I die, not what happened in the past. So kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah, so a farmer bill had done an easement that's on a deed that was recorded 100 years ago, and let's say the deed wasn't recorded. So title insurance may potentially cover that, even though it happened 100 years ago, and you're talking about what's happening or you're paying the premium today. So it is unique, definitely, in that situation.
Right.
Um,
And
but-
it's, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, and the title insurance, Jim, when I buy a house, or even when I do a refinancing, closing, a mortgage refinancing, isn't it almost always one of the largest line items in dollars?
Oh, it absolutely is. I mean, you're generally your highest that I see is taxes are usually the highest, depending on the value of the house. But then right behind that, or right above that, depending on the values, is going to be title insurance. So it is expensive, but it's like I said, it's potentially a once and done. So if you buy the house, you never refinance it, you're going to pay that premium once, and then you're going to have coverage for as long as you own that house.
Own the property. So yeah, it's usually, folks, it's behind that 1% transfer tax you pay if it's a sale or a purchase. And by the way, speaking of that, I know some states have the sellers buy the title insurance, but in Pennsylvania, the buyer pays for the title insurance.
Absolutely. The buyer is going to pay for their insurance, meaning the owner's coverage policy, and they're going to pay for the lender's policy. So if they borrowed it from ABC Bank, they've gotten a mortgage to pay for the house, they're going to buy the policy that covers the bank as well as an obligation to get that mortgage.
Okay, let's talk about that. I thought of something while you were talking there. I'm buying a house for $300,000, and I'm paying cash for it. Do I have to buy $300,000 worth of title insurance? Owner's coverage.
No, and that
I can buy $100,000. I could buy none. I can just not buy it at all, right?
Yep.
It's not required by law that I buy title insurance.
No, it absolutely is not. So I mean, you can, in that instance, you can buy anywhere from $1 up to $300,000 worth of value on that title insurance.
But why would you not buy? In my scenario, you're buying a house or any kind of real estate for $300,000 cash. Why would you buy less than $300,000? You can, but really, why would you?
Honestly, because you're a risk taker and you want to roll the dice and save a couple bucks now rather than have $300,000 worth of insurance.
Well, that's kind of my point, because let's say I bought $300,000. I can't off the top of my head. I don't know what the premium is, but on $300,000, the premium might be, I don't know, $2,500 or something ish.
I don't even know if it'd be that high.
Maybe not even that high off the top of my head. But if I only bought $200,000 worth of title insurance, what am I saving? $50 maybe?
$100, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
so it's not, folks, it's really not that much of a difference.
No.
You don't have to buy title insurance at all, but, and we're going to talk about in a minute here why you should, but I wouldn't cheap it by buying a little bit less if I'm paying cash.
No, my general rule of thumb, and I think I learned this from you, is I buy as much insurance as I can afford. In that instance, I would definitely bite the bullet and buy the full $300,000 if that's what I'm paying for that property.
Okay. What if I'm buying that same piece of real estate for $300,000 and I'm financing $290,000? Can I buy less than $300,000 worth of coverage?
You can. In your lender's policy, you most likely, if you're only borrowing $290,000, that's the amount of principal. The lender's coverage will only cover up to that $290,000 because it only covers up to the amount of the outstanding loan. But you're still going to buy $300,000 in your policy, so it's in the end it's going to end up being the higher premium because you're buying more on the
right.
policy.
And it was actually kind of a trick question. I threw you a curveball because you can buy less than $300,000. You can buy $290,000 because your lender. It goes a trick question. Your lender is going to require that you buy title insurance on the loan amount, which is $290,000. But why would you buy only $290,000? You might as well buy owner's coverage at $300,000, lender's coverage at $290,000. You only pay one premium.
Yep.
And you pay it on the higher number, the $300,000. So what do they call that? A simultaneous issue. So you have two policies being issued, one to cover your lender and one to cover you, but you only pay title insurance on the higher number.
Yes.
On a higher number. And who determines the premiums, Jim? Do you and I get together every morning and say, hey, this week or today, if we sell any title insurance policies, you know what, let's charge here instead of there?
No, no. It is set by the Commissioner of Insurance in Pennsylvania. So whether you get title insurance from ABC Title Company, from your attorney who's a licensed title agent, or from XYZ Title Insurance in Pittsburgh, you're going to end up paying the same rate, or the same rates are going to be based off of those rates from the Commissioner of Insurance. So it's the same regardless.
Okay. If I'm buying a property from my mother, I'm buying her home. And she's owned it for 5 years. That's it. Would you counsel me on getting title insurance?
I absolutely would, even though it's coming from a known party, and mom could say, well, I didn't have any mortgages, I didn't get any notices of any type of issues, or didn't receive anything that would pique an interest or raise a red flag. But regardless, I would still advise it, because did mom get it 5 years ago? We don't know that. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't. But even if she did, you are still going to want that coverage, and mom's policy is not going to cover you if you buy the piece of property.
That's right. Mom. That's a good point. I think I get that question not often, but I've received it. Wait a minute, I can just take my mom. If I'm buying the property, don't I get my mom's coverage?
No.
No. Also, what you would buy title insurance because you don't know what happened before mom bought the property 5 years ago.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, maybe if mom had bought it 55 years ago, a little bit less risk, but you don't know what happened more than 5 years ago, or before mom bought the property.
And you'd be surprised. I mean, I guess in my chair, when I review these titles, these things, a lot of these things that affect title didn't come from 5 years ago or 25 years ago. They're from 1900 and 1920. So, I mean, it was a long time before mom bought it or would have bought it. So you want to get that title insurance just to know what's out there, what easements that are going to be against your property that you can't do anything about, because, you know, if you have electrical service to your property, there's probably a PICO easement somewhere in there, and you're not going to do anything with that. But you might be concerned that your neighbor who lives behind you has an easement to drive over your front yard to get access his property, and that might be a bigger issue that you might be able to resolve. Right.
So, folks, you want to buy the title insurance because you want insurance that you're the one and only owner of the property, and that there are no liens, mortgages, or judgments against the property other than what you're putting on the property. But Jim, with the title policies that we get, the title commitments that we receive, how often, out of every 10, how often is there an old mortgage from the previous owner, not the seller, the present owner, but the owner prior to that are still on the property?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, with all the bank mergers that have happened, and with all the private loans, so the neighbor gave a mortgage to help you buy the property, but they never recorded the satisfaction. You see that all the time.
Yes.
And the nice thing with the title insurance is that if you get title insurance, it'll be up to your title insurance company to track those down and get them either released or get letters of that protect you when you're purchasing the property. So it's a great service one of the great services that title companies offer, is tracking those down.
And speaking of services, we have a minute before we break, or a minute and a half before we break for commercial. Jim, we have at the office 2 full-time title clerks. That's all they do all day long. We're agents for Fidelity National Title Insurance Company, so we don't do the actual search and the policies ourselves, but we conduct closings, the attorneys in the office. But we have 2 full-time clerks in the office. All they do is process these orders and help us get ready for closing, and then the attorneys do the closing. The title insurance premiums, we charge the same title insurance premiums as any other abstract company. And there's 2 different types of premiums. There's the sale premium.
Yes.
And the non-sale, which would be for a mortgage refinancing.
Yep.
But folks, we charge at O'Donnell, Weiss & Matei the same title insurance premiums anyone else does, and then the miscellaneous costs, notary fees, email or wire transaction fees, doc prep fees, etc., are plus or minus 10%-ish, the same as all the other abstract companies charge. And of course, then you also have the tax certification. So, so folks, that's a little commercial for O'Donnell, Weiss & Matei and title work. We're up against it, but on the second half of the show, we're going to talk about buying and selling real estate with or without realtors. So please hang tight, watch these words from our sponsor, and then join us in the second half of Legal Talk, brought to you by O'Donnell, Weiss & Matei Law Offices. Thank you.
How would you build the perfect bank? Would you put it close to your home or your work? Would you make it a high-tech wonderland with web banking and 24-hour access? Or a hometown bank with tellers who know your name? If you could build your perfect bank, it might look a lot like National Penn Bank. Convenient branch and ATM locations, innovative technologies for 24-hour access, attentive personal service, and free checking with no minimum balance or monthly account fees. It's all right here at National Penn Bank.
There are many reasons people join AAA and renew their membership year after year. In addition to the peace of mind of emergency roadside service, AAA membership includes expert travel planning, exclusive discounts, and more. AAA members also get exclusive Show Your Card and Save discounts at participating retail merchants and can save money on theme park tickets, luggage, and travel accessories at the East Penn Travel Store. Join today and start taking advantage of all AAA East Penn has to offer. And visit us on the web at www.aaa.com.
Good evening and welcome back to Legal Talk, the talk show brought to you by O'Donnell, Weiss & Mattei Law Offices. Your life, your business, your law firm. We're at 41 High Street in Pottstown, where we've been for 61 years, and 347 Bridge Street in Phoenixville, where, Jim, we've been 10 years. Yeah, it's been 10 years.
Absolutely.
And we're filming this in February of 2016. Or you can please also go to our website, owmlaw.com. I'm Dave Megay. I'm an attorney with the office, and I'm joined here tonight by Jim Kovaleski. Jim and folks, the first half of the show we talked about real estate transactions, and in particular we talked about title insurance.
Yes.
And how it works and what it does and what you get for the money you spend and how important it is that you get title insurance. Second half of the show, Jim, I'd like to talk about the scenario where while we deal with realtors all day long every day, which is a wonderful thing, some of our best friends and best referral sources are realtors in the local Tri-County area. We do occasionally run into private transactions. In fact, I just met with some people on Friday night where they have dear friends of theirs who have a young daughter who's she and her husband would like to buy their house.
Oh, very nice.
So, and you've been down that road a number of times. What's the attorney's role in that scenario?
Well, it depends on if you're representing the buyer or seller, but generally you're either going to be preparing or reviewing an agreement of sale. In most of those instances, you're going to use a form, like a PAR form, a Pennsylvania Association of Realtors form, that you'll either be reviewing that's been prepared by another attorney or someone else on behalf of the seller or on behalf of the buyer. So you're reviewing that, and you're looking for terms such as, what's the agreed upon purchase price? Something as basic
Can I
as
interrupt
that.
you there?
Absolutely.
Let me interrupt you before you get into terms, because I do want to talk about that.
Yep.
I just thought of this as you jumped in the purchase price. Even in the for sale by owner, FSBO, FSBO arrangement, but there's still a role, or haven't we still seen and recommend a role for the realtor?
Oh, absolutely.
Even in a FSBO situation.
Absolutely. I mean, if you, with a realtor, you can go to your local realtor and hopefully get them to provide to you what's the actual value of the property, their best estimate,
right.
So that you're not just picking something out of the sky, because sometimes when you pick something out of the sky like that, 5 years down the road, the buyer or the seller might feel a little upset because they're either undersold or over-purchased, depending on
right.
who you are. So the local realtor can be very helpful with things like that, with providing comparable sales that have occurred to help justify the purchase price. So yeah, absolutely.
And sellers should not rely upon what the house 3 doors down sold for or around the corner in the development sold for, because it's been my experience that if they sold for, I make up a number, $100,000, but maybe the property's worth $125,000, and the guys down the street sold quickly because they had financial issues or because they were relocated, or frankly they just were. I use the D word, dumb. They were just dumb.
Yeah,
they just undersold their property. Also, if the property down the street is listed for $150,000, because those sellers are shooting for pie in the sky, or their realtor that's listing that property down the block did a poor job of valuing the property,
yep.
You could be just wasting your time with the daughter of your dear friend, because she'll never get a mortgage for that.
Absolutely. I mean, you may even want to take it to the next step and get a full-blown appraisal. It costs you a couple $100. It's not that expensive, but you go to a realtor that's licensed to provide actual appraisals, so that you know what the value is, or at least what the appraiser is telling you the value is. So yeah, I mean, you could use your realtor to get in a sense, and maybe even use them to go one step further and get a full-blown appraisal.
And just to pull that scenario together, those people that I met with on Friday night, they're selling the house to their dear friend's daughter and son-in-law. They actually went and got a comparative market analysis, a CMA,
yep.
from a realtor back in November, a realtor that they trust and they know well, and they said to her, him, her in that case, that we're going to try to sell it to these people, and if it works, great. If it's not, if it doesn't, I want you to list it. And what would you list it for? So she did her homework, like realtors do, and they came up with a price of X. So that's what they're going to try to sell it to privately. Now, I interrupted you a minute ago.
Yep.
You started talking about what are the go through your mind's eye about the terms in that agreement of sale that you, the seller, need to talk to the buyer about or negotiate with the buyer.
The first one, it's probably the first question that I always get asked is how much.
What's the purchase price?
We just spent a couple minutes talking about that.
Right.
Our 1A, that's 1A. 1B would be when does that how much get paid? How much of a deposit is going to be put down? Is there going to be additional deposits because you need 90 days to close because you're going to be doing some inspections or some sort of investigations into the property? So maybe you want to put 10% down initially. You want another 10% after 45 days or 90 days, and then the balance is due at closing.
Yeah, and I remember back when I first started, way back 1987, my very first boss, wonderful man, Tom Burke Sr. from Ardmore, wonderful man. I could still see him lecturing me when I was just right out of Villanova Law School, and lecturing me, this is 1987, before computers, before fax machines, before emailing, before, I guess we had overnight mail, but wasn't used very often. Never, if you're a seller, never accept less than 20% down. That's a lot of money.
That's a heck of a lot of money.
That was also back when it never took less than 90 days to sell a property because we didn't have emails. Things didn't move quickly back then. We relied upon snail mail. So when people did mortgage applications, they literally hand wrote the mortgage application, folded it up, licked the envelope, put it in the envelope, and popped it in the mail. And the mortgage guy got it 3, 5, 7 days later. So if you're the seller, you want as much down as possible. That was Mr. Burke's admonition to me. That was his demand that I get, if I'm the seller, on behalf of seller clients, 20% down. That's a lot to get nowadays.
But I represent the buyer, so I'll give you $2.
Yeah, $2 sounds great for you, but $2 is not much of a commitment to the deal.
It's not.
Now, if we're going to go to settlement tomorrow, Jim, fine, give me $2. Yep. Today's Monday, we're taping this. If we're going to go to settlement on Friday, give me $5. Okay. The reason being is if the buyers walk out on the deal, get cold feet, I have to give. My client gets to put that $2 or $5 in their pocket. But big deal, they've wasted only a day or 2 or 3 or 5.
Sure.
But if it's a 3-month period or a month-and-a-half period, my client should get paid more than $5 to take the property off the market.
Absolutely, and that's even dependent upon the time of year, I think, a little bit. If you're talking about March, April, May, tying up the property for those 3 months, that's a prime time selling season here in Pennsylvania. So you might get a little bit more of a premium then if you're talking about January or December, January, and February, where it's a little bit slower.
Yeah, that's extremely important to me. Not just a little bit, but a lot of it. If I'm the seller and it's June and it's a hot real estate market and I have people knocking down the door looking to buy the property, and you come to me with clients who want to buy the property and take it off the market June, July, and August, settle in mid-August, you better wow me. You better impress me with a big deposit, because if you come in with that dollar noise or $2 noise or $500 noise, I'm not interested.
Sure.
I would say, you know what, Jim, your buyers need to go find a property somewhere else, because I've got 3, 5 other people interested in buying my client's property. So, folks, that's the give and take with the deposit. How much? And then, Jim, I've seen you do this a lot, both in residential deals and commercial deals, where you negotiate. Okay, fine. How about 5% or 3% down today on behalf of the seller, or for that matter, on behalf of the buyer, and then later on in the deal, I'll put another 3, 5% down.
Absolutely. I mean, you see that all the time when you hit certain benchmarks. If it's going to be a significant period of time between when you're signing the agreement of sale and when you're going to settlement, there's usually some benchmarks that are put in there, like mortgage, you've gotten your mortgage contingency, or you've gotten your mortgage loan approval, and you've waived that mortgage contingency. That might be another benchmark, or the inspections, the due diligence period. That's another. So yeah, I mean that's very common, where it allows the buyer to get in with a little bit down, but the seller gets protected because as you hit those benchmarks, that deposit goes up.
Okay, well, you kind of gilded the lily a little bit with future agreement of sale terms. You talked about settlement, or did you talk about settlement date?
Yeah. No, a little bit, yes.
A little bit, yeah. And the point is, I think I talked a little bit about it as well, that the quicker the settlement, the better the offer is if you're on the seller side.
Absolutely.
The longer period of time, the weaker the settlement date is.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you have some contingencies that go along with that settlement date, such as making the deal contingent upon you or your client selling their property.
That's one of the major contingencies where they already own property and they need to be able to sell that property in order to either get the money for the down deposit or to up that down deposit, or just to clear out that mortgage from their credit record so that they can get the new mortgage for the new property. For whatever the requirements are, yeah, that's usually one of the big contingencies that you see is the sale of their property. Another contingency I mentioned already is mortgage financing. So if they're going to go to the bank to get a loan, they're going to have a certain period of time to get that approval in. If they don't, they can walk away from the deal, get their money back.
And get their deposit back.
Absolutely.
We've talked about deposit, right.
What if they go beyond that? Their deposit may be at risk, we call it, where they might lose it if they walk away because they don't get that loan. Probably the other big one is due diligence. You're going to do some inspections. You're going to have the property inspection done. So you're going to have an inspector come in, take a look at everything from like the gutters, the roof, the crawl spaces, the doors, just to find out what's there, what's not there. Are there any warts on those systems or the property that need to be addressed when the transfer goes? So those are some of the bigger ones. And then title. We talked about title in the beginning.
Right.
Title, making sure that you can guarantee or give clean title. So if you do the title search and it shows that there's 12 judgments against the sellers and there's no way they can get rid of those judgments, well, that contingency is going to be triggered, and then the buyer's going to be able to walk away with their deposit.
Yeah, let's say there's 12 judgments and the amount of the judgments exceed the value of the property.
Yep.
There's just no way they can pass clean title so the buyers can get out of the deal and get their money back.
Yes.
Speaking of that, and you mentioned at the beginning of this segment, it's important that the attorney folks make it very clear to the buyer and the seller who the attorney represents. If the attorney represents the buyers, that has to be made very clear to the seller in writing. The seller can get their own attorney or not, but it's important that the attorney for the buyer let the seller know that there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The buyer's attorney is not giving any legal advice to the seller.
Great point, Dave. Real estate agents can be dual agents, so they can represent buyer and sellers, but as attorneys, we cannot. We'll get ourselves in some significant ethical issues if we try to do both of those.
Right, and we talked at the first half of the show about, we only have about a minute yet here, that we can act as buyer's attorney as well as title insurance agent. When do we order the title insurance search, usually?
It depends. We usually like to try and wait until some of those contingencies have been checked off so that we're not spending money on behalf of the buyer that may be needlessly. So what I mean by that is if one of those contingencies is triggered and the buyer can't go through with it, they don't want to be spending money on getting that title search done. So we try to hold off as much as possible to allow those contingencies time periods to expire and to make sure that the buyer's in a position where they can buy the property.
And not only do we try to hold off on the title search, but also on ordering certifications from the tax collectors, the water and sewer authorities, homeowners association if it's an HOA property, etc. So folks, if you're the buyer, you need to work closely with your attorney to make sure he or she orders title insurance at the appropriate time. We think we have a little bit of a competitive advantage because we're also title insurance agents if you use us. But Jim, we've only scratched the surface about selling property, selling real estate with or without a realtor. But let's wrap it up for tonight. Thank you for joining me. And folks, thanks for joining Legal Talk, brought to you by O'Donnell, Weiss & Metay. www.owmlaw.com, 347 Bridge Street, Phoenixville, 41 High Street in Pottstown. Your life, your business, your law firm. I'm Dave Megay. Have a great night.